We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred.
With Maxwell Silverhammer.
We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.
Oh, yes. Welcome, bitches. The Nothing Sacred interview. I am Maxwell Silverhammer. Cruise Control is under the weather tonight, I guess. And my guest is Jason Harney, retired Metro police officer, and also now a film creator. So, hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, by the way, we do this for all first responders when they're on the show. Got to thank you for your service.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So how long were you a Metro police officer?
I was on Las Vegas Metro for 23 and a half years.
Nice.
Started in 1991 and retired at the end of December 2014.
Oh, okay. Any reason for the retirement, or was it just kind of...
Well, that's probably one of the main reasons you're talking to me. I had this big, film making career planned and was anxious to get started.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's good, man. You actually retired. You know, how many officers do you hear about that actually, make it to retire? Or
it's kind of funny you say that, because when I talk about that with other people, it really isn't so much about I retired, but I usually use the term I survived and was lucky to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have anything where you ever had to pull your gun or that you thought, man, this is it. Might be the end.
Well, yeah, I think we all have situations like that throughout our career. I mean, unless you're the type of cop that's running and hiding from everything, inevitably, if you work the street in uniform for a lengthy period of time, you're going to have those types of calls where, sure, your firearm comes out and you think this is going to be the day I'm going to have to use it. Now, thankfully for me, that day never actually came, but we all have those close calls.
Nice. Well, hey, that's good. You're a lucky man. So, but contrary to popular belief, I know that policing is not always chasing bad guys, getting into shootouts, car chases. A lot of people it's sensationalized a little bit too.
No doubt about it. Yeah, and that's also something that I think we like to talk about quite a bit. Thanks to movies and TV and Hollywood, I think the general public has a very skewed vision of what police work is actually like. I remember in the 1990s, I was with a field training officer who trained me, who used to call us mobile secretaries with a gun. Probably wouldn't be a PC thing today to say, but generally speaking, it kind of is the gist of it, isn't it?
Mobile secretary with a... Well, now it's they need social workers and all kinds of other shit. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, things have definitely changed. I've been gone for over 8 years now, and it's I think before our eyes with a lot of the politics and a lot of the situations that have occurred here, particularly in June of 2020, obviously comes to mind. The dynamic of the job has certainly changed.
Yeah. Well, you got out at a good time, I guess.
Yes. No question about that.
Because, man, it could, and I'm sure it was starting. You probably saw at the tail end of your retirement, especially a lot of that starting to take shape, right? Where people, you had the thing in what was it, in Missouri?
Yeah, you mean in Ferguson?
Ferguson. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of the city. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these things actually are nothing new. If you think about it, even going back to early in my career, there were a number of incidents here in Las Vegas and all over the country that were very similar to that. I think just in today's day and age, the politics have changed and a lot of, the way the community interacts with police has changed. I think something that we hear a lot about is, back, say, in the 70s and 80s, young people used to respect the police. But today, That's just simply not the case. So our guys are out there having to deal with just a completely different public that is much more game when it comes to doing negative things and provoking them into doing things that they really don't want to have to do, but in the course of their duties and making an arrest, they're forced to.
And I was having a conversation with my handyman the other day, and he made a comment. And he goes, "Man, the world's just crazy. Cops are killing these kids for no reason." And I'm going, "Hey, wait, hold up, bro. No, because I watch a lot of body cam. That's mostly what I watch, honestly. I'm not really big into Hollywood anything, or some of these shows and things that you find on Netflix. I'm on YouTube, and you watch these body cam videos. And these people are doing stupid shit. They're reaching in their pockets, or they're making moves like they're about to go for something. And man, this is why these kids are getting killed. But the media doesn't want you to believe that.
No, as we know, depending on what flavor of news one decides to watch on any given day, there's going to be a certain narrative that's going to come with that particular network. And they're all guilty of it one way or another. So if a story comes out that doesn't fit what they're selling, then they're going to either spin it or not report it at all. But I'll tell you this, the fact is, when it comes to any use of force situation, whether we're talking about something that does involve a firearm, whether with the police or the suspect, or any type of physical use of force, the bottom line is the suspect's actions dictate the officer's actions. It's not the other way around.
Right.
If everybody did what they were told and followed lawful orders and lived to simply go to court and fight the charge, then I say 99 out of 100 of these situations that we see on the news would never have occurred.
No. Well, and then now you have this whole sovereign citizen movement, and I know my rights, and I go to YouTube University. So you got that. That's another building block on this as well.
Sure, and again, that just kind of adds another layer to what our men and women in blue are facing today. It's an ever-changing environment that is again led by the political party in power and the policies that they determine are the best for them, and the police are kind of the low-hanging fruit that the community gets to in a lot of ways force all their negativity on, rather than putting it where it needs to be in the politicians that are the ones that are responsible for a lot of these laws and a lot of these policies that the people are upset with.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody goes after the politicians. They go after the police. Well, speaking of narratives and showing, that's why you're here, because obviously your films show us the truth. You actually had a hand in the Wounded Blue documentary.
I did. I think we have a friend in common, as you had told me, Randy Sutton.
Yes, sir.
Randy and our careers paralleled for about 20 years, and we knew each other well on Las Vegas Metro. And shortly after I retired, which again was in 2014, late 2014, he had retired as a result of on-duty injury in 2010. And he knew I had just completed my first film, which was a sports film, and asked me to lunch one day, and we kind of started to talk, and he was telling me about he was forming an organization for injured and disabled police officers, and that basically he wanted to have me produce a film about his organization and what inspired him to create that organization, which is of course called The Wounded Blue, same as the film title is also called The Wounded Blue. And it tells the 6 stories that inspired Randy to create his organization, and really gives the viewer an inside look into the idea that cops are just simply not taken care of the way the public thinks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even that one scene there where you hear the automatic weapon going, and then you can hear your guys' radios where they're holding traffic, where it gives the beep tone. And man, it's like, wow, this is not, this is far from Hollywood, man. This isn't a Bruce Willis Die Hard situation. This is like some real street shit,
Sure thing. And we cover in that film, the mental side of things and the effect that trauma has on police officers. And I think that, if you go back into the Vietnam era, we all have heard or remember, seeing with our own eyes on the news the way the vets were treated when they came back in the 1970s from the Vietnam War. And it took literally decades for those veterans to get the mental health help that they needed, and to come to the realization that the horrors that they incur and see in the theater of war are absolutely going to have an effect on them. Well, when we made The Wounded Blue, we wanted to get the same point across for police, and I think you were referring to some of the footage that we used from the 1 October shooting at the Mandalay Bay. And I mean, so here you've got cops basically in a war zone with automatic gunfire raining down on them. One of them is hit in that footage. And, we want to show that correlation that post-traumatic stress injury can happen whether you're in Afghanistan and you shoot somebody and you have nightmares about it, or you're in Las Vegas and you have to shoot somebody and you have nightmares about it. The trauma is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we'll get into that in a little bit, because obviously your new movie, Wrist Lock, covers some of that as well. So that's an interesting thing too. And I just lost my train of thought. but yeah, no, The Wounded Blue is a great movie, a great documentary. I think everyone should see that. It would definitely give you a better idea of policing. And you got to admit, though, it's gotten worse, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. I mean, it would be really hard for me to tell somebody in my family or somebody close to me to encourage them to join a police department today. But then again, the other side of me says we need good people to hold that line. We need good people that are out there and are doing the job for the right reasons. So, it's kind of that back and forth, because you're sending them into a world of negativity, a world where once you enter it, you'll never be the same again.
Right. Well, in Wrist Lock, now you're covering post-traumatic stress disorder and the mental health of police officers. So obviously, that's been something I'm sure when you first got on the force, they didn't talk about that kind of thing, right? You covered things like that up.
Well, yes and no. Working at Las Vegas Metro would be not a good example, I think, of how things, so I have found in working with Randy and his organization, are in other parts of the country. A simple statistic is about 80% of the police departments in this country have 50 officers or less. So the vast majority of departments are very small. They do not have the infrastructure in place for things like training and to ensure they have peer teams and to be, set up for that time one of their guys gets into a critical incident and needs some type of help, whether it be on the physical injury side or the mental injury side. Las Vegas Metro, 5,800 employees, is a very large agency. When I was working there, it was the 7th largest in the country. So we had a peer team that was a regular full-time unit that we could go to for one-on-one confidential help. When I had already hired on in 1991, I believe it was created a couple years before I hired on, and it was a thing. And of course, I thought all departments had that kind of thing until I retired and started doing work for the Wounded Blue for production, and found out from traveling to all these different agencies that that's just simply not the case.
Man, well, I just got to say, Metro is inherently badass. And this isn't biased because I live here. I think we have a rockin' ass police department. I mean, there's stuff you see people doing in other parts of the country that I don't think they get away with here, as far as, just civilians and things.
Well, I would certainly say the same thing. I mean, there obviously are always going to be some bad things that are going to come out of the police department. It's just inherent within the job. There's always going to be some people that don't belong there, that probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place, but they still made it through all of the testing and the training, and there they are out on the street. You really just never know how someone's going to perform until they get into that situation and they actually do it. And you hope you can catch them early. But life takes its course, and sometimes you just simply don't. So, that said, yeah, absolutely. Las Vegas Metro, when it comes to its organization, its training in particular, absolutely would receive a gold star from me. And yes, that's going to come from a little bit of bias. I worked in training for a good portion of my career. That's what the film Wristlock is about training and the belief that what we were doing at Las Vegas Metro sent officers on the right path. And for a variety of reasons, most police agencies do not provide their officers the training they need to be successful in use of force scenarios.
You know what was interesting too in Wristlock, and God, you just never think about stuff like this, especially if you're not a police officer. Just little things like the strategic placement of things on your duty belt. Like the guy was talking about even your cuffs, where your cuffs are at. And I thought, well, Jesus, I thought cuffs were just used for handcuffs, but hell, you could use them as a weapon. But like you were saying, or somebody was saying in the movie, the tasers on the, behind his back, and it's like it's not readily accessible in case there's a close combat situation. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's Bob Hindi, and he created the Hindi duty belt safety system. He was a longtime police officer and canine officer on our agency. I believe he did about 28 years. And, when he retired, he went and brought that belt system out nationally and actually worldwide and trained tens of thousands of officers in those concepts. And they're actually very simple, but yes, where your gear and your tools are placed on your belt could be the determining factor in how fast you're able to deploy those tools at a time where you really need them. Where time matters, where a half a second could be the difference between deploying the tool properly and having it be ineffective. So that goes for anything that's on your belt. And really, that's the cornerstone of where defensive tactics starts, because every officer, when they show up on a call, they're already using force. We call that officer presence. And that presence is them in a uniform with that belt on that has a variety of tools at their disposal. But deploying them properly is the very basic cornerstone of defensive tactics and utilizing them in a use of force situation.
Yeah, that's wow. It gave me a different perspective. Again, I'm a civilian, so I'm not even thinking about shit like that. But obviously, with police, and obviously there's some police that aren't thinking about that because some of their departments aren't really what they go through the training, and then that's it. It's kind of like going through public school. You get shot through, and that's it.
Yeah, that's really one of the main themes of our film Wristlock. That's what we want to convey to the general public, not so much to a police audience who knows this stuff typically, but to a mainstream audience who always has the question, why did the cop do this, or why did that happen? Well, here's a fact. Most police agencies in this country will put you through a police academy. Then once you graduate, let's say you're 21 years old and you graduate the police academy, now 5, 10, 15 years down the road, the department does not require any recertification training in your unarmed self-defense, baton, OC, your electronic control device, all the tools on your belt, and how you use your hands in a use of force scenario. You never recertify on those techniques and tactics again. So I kind of equate that to, let's say you're going to have an open heart surgery and you find out that the doctor who's going to perform the surgery has not had any recertification training since medical school in the last 20 years on the latest modern concepts of heart surgery. You want that guy cracking open your chest? Likely not.
That's an excellent example too, because I'm thinking about, doctors have to go get, massage therapists have to renew their licenses. It's real stringent. So where it's more, here it is, I don't remember if it was you or if it was in your movie, but you were talking about, what LeBron James goes through a bunch of training and all this just so he can win the game and be good out there in the court. But, the worst thing that happens to him is, oh shit, he loses a basketball game. Whereas in your case, hey, you might lose your life.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely a great point. In Wristlock, one of the other themes that we try to convey is this idea that police officers need to be treated more like professional athletes, that they need those training concepts that professional athletes get applied to them. Because again, yeah, it's not about wins and losses for us. It's about life and death in some circumstances. So you have to be your best. I remember when I was an academy instructor in the late 1990s, one of the things I used to tell our class was, you know, a UFC fighter can be considered a Hall of Fame caliber fighter and have 10 losses on his or her record. But a cop, you can't lose. You have to go through your 25-year career undefeated. And that's a fact, because if you don't, you could die.
Yeah. Yeah. And granted, things do get hairy out there. You got people on, well, God, with all the meth and and other stuff that's out there. You know, these people have superhuman strength. So sometimes it may take several police officers to take that guy down, but that's the point, man. That's why you even need to be more vigilant, I would think.
Yeah, and you know what we say in Wrist Lock in the film is that there's three main factors that will lead to a successful use of force outcome. The first is going to be your defensive tactics proficiency, which is what you were just talking about, in that you have to have an individual officer or a group of officers proficient in the same techniques so they can effectively use force on a subject who, as you gave an example, could be high on some type of drug. The second, and is crucial, is physical fitness. As we know, just like society, police have an obesity problem. And in fact, in Wristlock, we talked with a doctor, Dr. John Scheinberg, who's a board-certified cardiologist out of Austin, Texas. He's also a reserve Austin police lieutenant, and he treats first responders exclusively. And one of the things he talks about is not only do we have a disparity of dying 22 years earlier than the general public, but in studies he's done on 5,000 cops in Central Texas as recently as the last 5 years, over 80% are obese.
That's
and
a
it's
high
just
number.
not going to get it done. Not from a health perspective, which is the most important, but from a physical fitness perspective of being able to perform the tasks the job requires. This is where we get into that conversation about the mainstream public wanting answers as to why certain things happen the way they do, because the cop is gassed, because the cop can't perform the task anymore that maybe he or she could 10 or 15 years ago when they were in great shape in the police academy.
You know, they have a thing for state of Nevada employees called the Live Well, Be Well program. And they stay on your ass, you know, about what you're eating. You know, if you're a smoker, they try to encourage you to stop, you know, all kinds of other wild stuff. You guys, police officers, I don't believe have any kind of program like that, do they?
No, and in fact, it's an argument that myself and a lot of people that were like-minded would have all the time during our careers, and that is in the police academy, which again, I was a training officer in the late 90s for 3 years, and then was the academy sergeant for another 3 years in the mid 2000s. So had a lot of experience putting police recruits through. And I can tell you, we would do physical training with them at a fairly high level 4 or 5 times per week. Now, at the end of the academy, they're required by peace officer standards and training in Nevada to pass a physical fitness test. But guess what? The day they graduate, they never have to jump through that hoop ever again in their entire career.
So this is a one-time thing?
No sense.
It's a one-time thing? That's it?
That's it. And that's not just Nevada. That's all 50 states.
Whoa. That's some shit. You know, that's something with legislation that might need to, you know what I mean?
I agree. I can tell you that the number one impediment to that is unions. Police unions do not want, for whatever reason, any incumbent police officers to have to pass a physical fitness test. Again, this is not Nevada, only Nevada. This is nationwide.
You know, unions are just such a pain in the ass. They're so counterproductive to anything that's going on as far as any organization. And really, they're just kind of there to make money. They tell you who to vote for, and they're just in your ass at all times, you know, and they really don't help out much. I don't really see a need for them, honestly.
Well, they serve their purpose in some circumstances, particularly as it results to, labor disputes and contract negotiations and lobbying the legislature for police related bills that relate to things like retirement, workers' comp, etc. I mean, there's some purpose there, but at the same time, they represent the rank and file. And I think again, it's a societal thing, but it's absolutely a police culture issue where physical fitness is not a priority, and it never has been. And that, of course, delves right into that third prong of being successful in use of force scenarios, and that's mental health. So you've got cops who are both physically compromised as well as mentally compromised from all the trauma that they've endured throughout their career. And you wonder why we have cops that go into situations and either underreact or overreact to a level that a lot of people would refer to as police brutality.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that in the movie too, in Wrist Lock, where somebody had made the example where the officer would say, well, if I get put on the ground, I'm pulling my gun.
Right.
And it's just like, whoa, you're going from point A to point Z just like that.
Well, what ends up happening is you get a lot of cops that once they get a specific amount of time on where they kind of get that more or less what we would call a salty attitude, they don't want to train. They don't want to get physical. A lot of times, and this is also mentioned in Wrist Lock, you'll have supervisors at the squad level who, when they're given a training day by their lieutenant for a full day to train, which is supposed to incorporate 4 hours of defensive tactics recertification, what do? Well, they do what we would call pencil whipping it, where the instructor just signs off, just say we did the training and we're going to breakfast. And that's a very common thing that happens. Again, not just Las Vegas Metro. This is a police culture thing. This is a law enforcement problem. It happens everywhere. And as you saw in Wrist Lock, we traveled all around the country and spoke to a number of police trainers from different agencies. They all said the same thing. They go through all the same issues. Once cops hit a certain mark where they're not young anymore, and for most of them, that's maybe 5 years, 10 at the most, they're suddenly against doing anything physical because now they put on 25 pounds since the academy. They're just not what they used to be physically, and they're probably afraid of getting hurt. I don't really know what the reason is specifically, but as trainers, we would run into that all the time.
Wow, man. And there's no real push either, as far as like, hey, don't you want to be a better officer? Don't you? Is some of this maybe related to burnout?
It could be. And, I think we talk a little bit in Wrist Lock too about how life just kind of takes over. People have families, they have kids, they have other priorities. And unfortunately, fitness and their proficiency at the job isn't their priority anymore. I mean, cops are A personalities, as you know, so they're not going to want to be questioned as to whether they can or can't perform. That's the one thing you never want to say to a cop if you're a supervisor, because, then all of a sudden they're going to get defensive and take it like, there's some level of weakness there. And then Lord knows we can't have any weakness, right? That's not allowed in our job. So yeah, I mean, that's the conundrum that trainers always deal with, law enforcement trainers in the film. Betsy Brantner Smith, who is a nationally known and recognized trainer, talks about that at length in that there's this issue with cops who, once they get a little bit of tenure, they just simply think they know it all and don't want to train anymore. And that is a detriment to any use of force scenario, because it's like anything. If you don't practice it, you're going to lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I think anybody, I've been in my job for a long time too. And whenever my supervisor says, well, I want you to do this training, or I want, my first thought is, I've been here so many years. What do you think? I'm an idiot? So right away, there's a defensiveness. I don't think it's just a police thing. I think it's that whole, like you said, the tenure. I've been here for so long. What do you mean I need to take training? So,
Yeah, and there's no question about that. And you usually don't have that issue with firearms related training. Most cops enjoy going up and firing at paper targets on a quarterly basis.
Of course.
For the most part, most do. But when you talk about going into a mat room and getting physical with one another, putting on gloves and hitting pads and actually breaking a sweat and doing scenario-based training like you see in wrist lock, Tony Blauer, he demonstrates it. We're using the high gear suits that we would use at the academy and in-service level for years, putting on training where you're literally doing force on force, realistic training. Some cops, the real young ones, love that, but the ones as they start to get older, they don't. But the point is, they're still on the street and they still could be involved in a use of force situation their very next shift.
Sure, absolutely. Especially, you know, age doesn't exempt you from violence, obviously. So, but wow, you know, well, here's the thing: you always hear this, and oh fuck. Well, we're gonna have to take it here. Politically, you hear from the left all the time. Oh, you know, the police need more training. They need more training, but it's not the training you're talking about. They're talking about, you know, sensitivity training and gender fluidity training and all this other shit that no, you don't need training in. But the training you're talking about is that necessary training. So
absolutely. Yeah. And again, you talk to any police trainer on any police department, they will all tell you the same thing. Training days, most agencies are non-existent. Recertification training is not required by most states in this country for defensive tactics. And in some cases, even firearms. There are some agencies that don't even qualify every year with their firearms. So, you know, there are a lot of holes in training. And as a trainer, believe me, none of us are ever surprised when we see an incident unfold on body camera that it, you know, becomes a national issue, because we're looking at those training deficiencies. We can see them because that, when you're a full-time trainer, that's all you're doing is coming up with these scenarios and figuring what the best way is to train cops. And that's really what wrist lock is about, is to convey some of what we believe we perfected on Las Vegas Metro, and they have continued to do so long since I left. There's so many talented people that work there, particularly in the training area, that other agencies could follow. But the problem is always going to be money and manpower. You know, every sergeant, every lieutenant is going to focus on putting people on the street and handling calls. Training's always going to be on the back burner, but that's to the detriment long term. We know that, and that's why a lot of these situations that get national attention occur in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's a shame that everything's about numbers. You know, as long as we get enough officers to answer these calls, as long as we have enough officers on the street. So yeah, it's a big, you know, it's all image for the powers that be, as it were. Oh, look, yes, they're doing a great job. We give them more funding, or you know, whatever.
Yep, it certainly can be, and you know, those are the issues that we deal with, and that's why I made wrist lock. You know, we wanted to talk about it from a martial arts standpoint, knowing the fact that all the defensive tactics that are taught to law enforcement in this country are all derived from the martial arts, and we wanted to point out what makes a good martial artist. Well, they're dedicated. They're typically going to be physically fit, and they practice, they train, and they're passionate. Those are the exact attributes we need every cop to have. And if we did, we would have a lot less of these situations that the public tends to get angry about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a lot of people think too, you know, right away when I said martial arts, and I'm thinking out for justice.
It's all.
When he takes the cue ball and puts it in the towel and he's swinging it around, or the guy fencing with the pool sticks. But obviously it's a little more involved than that. It's not just the physical you know, exertion or whatever, being able to defend yourself, but it's the mental ability. You know, the martial artist is the coolest person mentally. I think you cover that in wrist lock as well.
Yeah, well, and why is that? It's because of one word: confidence. I mean, if you're not confident in what your skill level is, you're not going to perform in a real use of force situation where your body and life is on the line. You just simply won't. John Gentile is the main subject of the film, as you know, and he's a retired 27-year police sergeant from Las Vegas Metro, but he also happens to be a master martial artist. He's been involved for over 40 years. and holds rank in a number of different systems, extremely well-rounded. And one of the quotes in the film that I really love that he said is when he talks about the fact that he is less likely to use force, knowing that he can use force effectively. That says a lot.
Yeah, yeah, because it's not just brute force. It's like, let me see if I can, disarm the situation mentally first, and if it escalates, I'm able to defend myself.
Absolutely. Well, and again, it's using a reasonable amount. I think what happens with a lot of cops is say somebody runs from them and they chase them. Maybe they've got a felony warrant and in their minds or policy dictates that they are going to foot chase them. So now their heart rate's going to elevate. They've got a vest that is constricting their breathing. They're carrying 25 pounds of gear around their waist. They might have gained 20 pounds since the academy. They're probably not in the best shape of their life anymore, but yet they're still chasing this guy. And if they finally catch up to this person and tackle them and the fight is on, I think what ends up happening a lot of times is a lot of these cops end up, throwing in a couple extra licks because they've kind of lost it emotionally because they're not confident in their skills or their tactics or their physical fitness. And they're just kind of surviving at that point. Right. And I would ask any member of the public, is that really what you want? Do you want a police officer who's not confident in their abilities? Because if the answer is no, then they have got to force their police chiefs and sheriffs at their respective police agencies to train their cops the proper way.
So what actually, and yes, you're right, that there were a few, you had a few people in Wristlocked actually that were Metro police officers or ex-Metro cops.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, including myself, John Gentile was there. What we wanted to do is we wanted to cover a lot of the different martial arts, again, that defensive tactics that's taught to law enforcement are derived from. So we wanted to cover Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Thai boxing, karate. All of those arts contribute to the defensive tactics lesson plans that are taught to all cops in this country.
Man, that's just wondering how you can change that. I guess that's kind of what the reason for the documentary was. There was obviously a need to make somebody look at that.
Well, change is actually rather simple. It's just a matter of the peace officer standards and training organizations for each state to mandate recertification training at some level for every police agency in that state. For Nevada, every officer is required 16 hours of recertification training. So that's 4 per quarter. That's not a whole lot, but most agencies require 0. So, obviously that's where Metro kind of gets that gold star, but it's not good enough. They can always improve. But now we start thinking about those smaller agencies where they do 0 training. So you've got this guy that might have last had his use of force scenario-based training in the academy 20 years ago, and that's the person responding to this fight call. And that's just not going to get it done. Yeah.
Boy, that's it's kind of scary too, from a civilian perspective, that, wow, okay, these are the dudes, this is who we look to for our safety. So, and if this person can't defend themselves, how are they going to defend the community?
Well, exactly. And I mean, I've always been, since the 1990s, late 80s, technically a big Steven Seagal fan myself. And so I can totally relate to those films, but really it is the fault of Hollywood, movies and television, that have given cops this kind of aura of superhuman ability to the point where the general public sees them screw up and wonders why. I thought they have all of this great training and that they're just top shelf and top level at every single task they're expected to do. And then when they screw up, everybody wonders, well, how did that happen? The fact of the matter is they never had that great training in the first place. There's over 850,000 cops in this country. And I would say less than 1%, only the ones that work in special units like SWAT have the level of training that would be necessary, the kind I'm talking about here, that would be necessary to be successful in use of force outcomes.
My favorite is the armchair police officer who says stupid shit like, well, I think maybe what they need to do is just shoot the gun out of the guy's hand or something. Just something that's completely out of a Steven Seagal flick, Van Damme, or any of those guys, And obviously these aren't that's not what you're shooting for here. What you guys are talking about is just self-preservation, mentally, physically, that type of thing.
Well, and Mike Bland, he's our BJJ expert in the film. He also is a retired police officer and trainer from Las Vegas Metro. And he has a good quote in the film that you might remember where he talks about on your first shift, you are likely going to put your hands on somebody. So you might want to be good at it.
Yeah.
But a lot of cops don't have that attitude. They just simply do not have that thought process and passion toward making themselves the best version that they can be each and every day. It's just simply not there because there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of trauma, and a lot of outside influences, some of which you were discussing earlier, given what occurred in 2020 and beyond, and the politics of everything. That all factors into this. I'm not saying that this is easy, but I am saying that every agency in this country could easily add more training into their regimen and get their cops at a much higher level than they currently are.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, also in wrist lock, kind of switching gears, getting back to the mental health part of it. You had the one, this story kind of messed with me a little bit. The guy in LA who was, he was chasing a suspect that was beating on a woman or something, and then those guys broke in his car, and it was just this crazy domino effect, and eventually he got his leg ran over by a car. How did you come in contact with that guy and say, hey, let's be in the movie?
Well, yeah, his name is Alex Salazar, and he is a former Los Angeles police officer, LAPD. And yes, in the early 1990s, when he was a brand new cop, he was involved in an off-duty incident. He was actually on his way to work, and he had his uniform hanging in his car. He had his gear and everything, but he was witnessing basically a robbery in progress where some gang members were trying to rob a woman and steal a purse. So he, being the rookie cop that he is, we all have that feeling when we're new on the job and want to save the world. So he stops and he intervenes, but he's not prepared to do so. Remember, he doesn't have his vest. All he has is a little 6-shooter gun that's in his pocket. He doesn't have the tools, doesn't have a radio to call for help, nothing. This is the early 90s. So he attempts to intervene, but they basically don't take him seriously and they call his bluff. And when he pulls his firearm on them, they still advance on him, which means he retreats. He knows he can't shoot them at that particular moment, and then a car hits him, breaks his leg in two, and they basically tear his car up and beat the car up with a baseball bat and then run away laughing. But you saw what happened to him. It wasn't so much recovering from the physical injury that was the challenge. It was the fact that he, as a Hispanic officer, now began to equate violence with black and brown skin.
Right.
In other words, as he says in the film, he became a racist for the rest of his police career, which was a complete downward spiral.
That's crazy. And that just feeds this whole crazy narrative of today.
Sure.
Wow. And obviously he's Hispanic. And that's the thing, they all like to say that, black and Hispanic cops are sellouts and this and that. And so that just kind of feeds that whole crazy narrative.
It does. Yeah. And, the way we had met him originally is I did a segment on him back in 2020 with Randy Sutton on a 6-part docuseries that we did that was a sequel series to the Wounded Blue film called Voices of the Blue. And Alex is one half of the first episode. But in Wrist Lock, I was able to take it a step further because, as you notice, for the first time in over 30 years, we brought him to where it happened, right there at 8th and Broadway, downtown Los Angeles, and let him walk us through what exactly occurred to him. So, we were able to take that a step further, and it was a really emotional shoot because, again, it brought back, horrible traumas and memories. But as I said, he's an activist today, and his thinking was, I'm going to do it because I know it's going to help other people.
Yeah, well, that's it. And that's awesome for him, to be able to go back and face that demon. Because you do see him in Wrist Lock, he starts crying when he's going, he's recounting all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's really, really cool that he's able to do that. But you had a few other films I kind of wanted to touch on real quick. Repeat Offender,
Sure.
which is something that happened out here. How did you link up with Bradley Nichols?
Same way, Randy. We worked together for like 20 years. So,
Wow.
you know, these guys all knew that when I retired that I had become a filmmaker, and Brad, before we made that film, about 4 years before that, he had written a book about the case while he was still employed by LVMPD. So I had read his book and actually pitched the idea to him in what would become my second film to basically adapt his book into a movie. And so that's what we did in 2018.
You know, it's funny. I read the book. So because and no offense to the movies or whatever, but the book always seems to have a little more detail and goes
Sure.
into a lot more than say the movie. So I read the book and it was quite the story. I mean, the guy he was chasing was the biggest piece of shit, and there was so much going on with that guy. It wasn't just one thing. He wasn't just a what do they call him? A serial burglar, as it were. You know, I mean, he had other stuff going on too.
Well, certainly. And you know, to this day, there's stolen property recovery on the main search warrant and the 4 storage units that they also serve search warrants on simultaneously is the largest stolen property recovery in Nevada history. It's also the largest cash recovery in Nevada history as well. So yeah, it was a crazy property caper. But what sets it apart, of course, is when after that warrant and he's in jail, he tries to hire the Serenos to do
Make the hit. Yeah.
hire on Brad, Sandy, the DA, and Judge Levitt, who was the presiding judge at the time.
Right.
So that's really the bizarre part of the case, obviously, but it's pretty amazing to me because in my career and experience, property crimes were typically dealt to you know lesser charges, and people would usually do no time. And I think Damon Monroe, the crook we're talking about, I think he knew that. But if it wasn't for Brad's tenacity and dedication to that case, I can tell you after the initial car stop where they were arrested the first time, him and his co-conspirator, the DA wasn't going to go on it. So it would have just been, you know, shit can case, and they would have been back out on the street doing their thing again the next day. But Brad stuck with it, saw there was more to it, began to investigate and realize this guy's responsible for probably half the commercial burglaries in the entire city over the last like 6 years at that time. And, you know, I always call that a master class in detective work because you're talking about a case that he investigated for the better part of 8 years to uncover all the layers of this criminal organization.
Well, and there was a lot, and the guy just scoffed at law enforcement and just at everything, you know, just the way he was, you know, his whole attitude, plus the thing with him molesting his kids, you know, that came out later too.
Yep.
So,
you know, and I agree too. When we always talk about, like, you know, maybe use like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or a lot of other examples where the book is always better than the movie because of the detail. I would say the one thing that I liked about the movie that we made was the fact that you could hear the jail phone calls, which meant you could get a really good look into this guy's mind and his nonchalant, arrogant attitude toward the criminal justice system and toward the victims that he was tormenting for years.
Right. Well, I mean, but obviously Bradley was able to decode all that, make him go swimming for a little bit, you know, where he's talking about the jewelry store guy owner.
Yep, to try to get him not to testify. That's correct. Yeah, I mean, it really was a very bizarre case, no question. And, you know, for a little bit of trivial purposes, the one thing that kept it, I think, from becoming more of a national news story was at the exact same time, you might recall, was when OJ was arrested at the Palace Station for his robbery deal in that hotel room that ended up putting him in prison. And that ended up dominating the news at the exact same time this case was going on. Right.
Because that was what, 2002 or 2007. That's right. It was later.
Yep.
So God, but it took that long. You know, you probably had come in contact. Bradley was probably telling you, oh man, this Damien guy, he's a piece of shit. I'm telling you, I'm still going. So there was probably dialogue that you guys just had personally just in the break room, as it were, or in the gym or whatever.
Yeah, and then as fate would have it, 10, 12 years later, whatever it is, we're making a movie based on his book, which was really cool because he, of course, was able, as you know, to not only bring in himself, but all of the people that helped investigate the crime, a lot of the victims. And we even flew to the home of Damon Monroe's girlfriend of the time and got to sit down with her and have her tell the story, which was an interesting look into that guy's mind and what his motives were as a criminal or as a repeat offender, as it were. So yeah, it's a very interesting film to make for sure. And it's just one of those things I would always encourage not just any law enforcement officer, but anyone who is interested in investigations and wants to see how an investigation unfolds over a long period of time and what it can lead to. It's a great film and a great book to check out.
I'm gonna have to check out the film because it would be interesting to hear the jail calls that he was having with especially his lackey buddy. I can't remember the guy's name now.
Brian Ferguson.
That's right. Yep. And just the way he was kind of talking where Damien would screw around with him and he'd tell that it was the first playful, but then it got a little weirder and they started using we're power washing and tell them we're going to do some power washing, so yeah,
you'll love here in the film. We present all of the phone calls, all the pertinent ones, and so you'll really love how that fleshes out what was able to be put in the book. You get a little bit more specific into what led Brad into discovering the Matthew tool that they speak about.
Oh yeah, Matthew. I forgot about Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, geez. Well, Jason, man, I appreciate you, taking the time to spend with us. Do you have any, information as far as websites, things you want people to check out, where they can get a hold of you maybe, or just see your movies or what?
Yeah, sure. My website is lightningdigitalentertainment.com. Pretty much all my movies are on places like Amazon, iTunes, Microsoft Store, Google Play, Tubi, Plex, if you want to watch them for free with ads. They're on all of the standard platforms that people watch content. And if you need links to all of those different platforms, specifically to the films, if you want to watch trailers or clips, again, I go to lightningdigitalentertainment.com. For me personally, I'm on Twitter. My handle's @JasonHarney72, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Just look me up and connect with me, and love to talk with any of you. It's always a pleasure.
Nice. And you have, what is it, 4 movies now?
I have made 5 feature films, plus the Voices of the Blue 6-part docuseries, and then I've got 2 more films coming up that are in the pipeline.
Nice. Voices in the Blue is I think it's on YouTube. I thought I saw it a few years ago.
That is correct. Yeah, we debuted that in 2020, right in the heart of the summer of love. And, yeah, probably not the best of timing to put out an injured and disabled cop series, but yeah, it's more stories, more exploration of what the themes we covered in the actual Wounded Blue film.
Nice. Well, Jason, thank you again. Hang on with me real quick. And the rest of you, I am Maxwell Silverhammer. This has been the Nothing Sacred interview with Jason Harney, retired Metro police officer and now film creator. And anyway, that's the story there, bitches. We'll see ya.
We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred. We are nothing sacred.
With Maxwell Silverhammer.
We are nothing sacred. With cruise control. We are nothing sacred.